Okay, I have a confession. When I first started listening to this tube amplifier, after a couple of weeks, I wasn't really impressed by the sound of it. I mean, it sounded pretty good, but I thought something was lacking or missing or a little bit unbalanced, let's say. Because to tell you the truth, the sound of it, it seemed to favor a little bit more the right speaker versus the left speaker. Now, it wasn't that much difference, but it was definitely noticeable in my system. And I tried everything, switching the cables, checking all my inputs, stuff like that. Everything was correct on it, but there was definitely something wrong with it. Well, you know what? It turns out it was my fault. I didn't put in the tubes in properly, and I'll tell you all about it. But let's get on with the review here. This is the Galion TS120. Let's get into it. So Thomas from Thomas in Stereo of YouTube created this tube amplifier with the help of a Chinese manufacturing company that also does tube amplifiers. Their name is called Doge amplifiers. So Thomas, I guess, collaborated with Doge, went to them and said, look, if I wanted to create a tube amplifier with a cost no object built into its budget, what can you guys do for me? Well, they came up with this, and then after some testing going back and forth, and I assume that Thomas voiced this the sound of this tube amplifier, they created two different amplifiers, and then Thomas created a website. It's called Galion Audio, and it's a direct-to-customer website. So he has a couple of products on there right now. It's this TS120, and then there's also a TS120 SE, which is the special edition of this amplifier. So it's voiced slightly different. From what the website says, it sounds like to me it's more analytical of a tube amplifier, and this one is more kind of a relaxed, I guess, version of it. So probably a little bit more fun sound that's voice for it. So that's kind of what it says on the website for it. So like I said, there's two amps, a standard edition. They sell for roughly $3,500 US for the regular standard edition, and then $4,500 for the special edition version, and that includes free shipping, I believe, all over North America for it. So the specs on these amplifiers, I think they're both spec pretty much the same. So and also it's a Class A and Class AB amplifier, which I'll get into. You could switch them both. So this one in Class A, it's 30 watts per channel with a maximum output of 75 watts per channel. And in Class AB, it puts out a little bit more power at 50 watts per channel with a maximum of 100 watts per channel. The weight on this unit is very hefty, 65 pounds. And it's very, it seems like it's back heavy, and when you pick it up out of the box and carry it, it actually says in the manual, don't grab it by its sides, grab it by the back and the front of it. So so it's easier, I guess, to carry. And as you can see, there's 8 tubes with it. So these 4 tubes here control the preamp section, and then these control the power section. So there's 8 tubes of it, and I'll now show you the front and the back of each unit. Okay, so first I'll go over the front panel of the unit. As you can see, power on off, so this is actually standby. So it takes about 30 seconds for the tubes to kind of get warmed up and ready to go, and you'll hear a click. This will stop flashing when it's kind of ready to go. This is the change button. I'll describe that later for changing the amplification from Class A to Class B. The bias for the tubes, the button here to change it from Class A to Class B, and then these I'll go over once I show you how to bias and change the amplification. Nice volume knob. Everything on here is just top class machinery. It's really well built. Tone controls, bass and treble. This changes the sound, so there's an A-B sound, which slightly changes the profile of the sound, and then T is to put it into there, and you could change the it's for tone controls for treble and bass. And then this is the input section on here. And yeah, that's about it, and this is obviously for the remote control, and pretty much that's the front of the unit. So now let's go to the back of the unit. Okay, let's take a look at the back here of the Galion S120 tube amplifier. A good number of inputs here. start off here with the RCA inputs. So you got 4 RCA inputs for CD player, phono, preamp, stuff like that. Home theater RCA. So this here you hook up to your home theater receiver, and it would disable the volume on this tube amplifier, and you'd use your home theater receiver to control the volume of it. Tape output RCAs. Now interesting here, there's a couple of subwoofer outs. So there's left and right, and you can configure this into stereo and mono RCA output. So that's pretty cool. As you can see, some heavy duty binding posts, and you have a couple of options here. So whether you have 4 ohm speakers or 8 ohm speakers, so 4 ohms you'd hook it up into these two over here, and then 8 ohms you'd hook it up into those, so it's like left and right. Couple of ground out options here. So if you grounding output, so if you have some noise humming into your amplifier here, you could try hooking up to the ground out here, and this would do normal or noise reduction. So you could try out those two to get rid of any hum that you have with the amplifier. Master power switch here, and a regular AC input there for you to plug it in. Alright, so one of the best features on the Galion TS120 is that you could switch this amplifier from Class A to Class AB. And it's just a few simple steps, and I'll show you how to do it right now. So there's 3 buttons on here that you need to use to do it, and also on the remote control you could do it as well. But I'll start off here. So you hit change, and this will take it into a mode. It'll click it here in a few seconds, and then it's ready to be changed from Class A to Class B. So I'll just let this go for half a second here. Once it clicks, I'll hit change here to Class A, and then after that you hit bias. So now it's going to bias the tubes here, and you have to wait until all 4 of these turn a solid blue, and then this shuts off. So just give it here half a second to do this. Sometimes it has to cycle here a couple of times to do it, but it's a fairly simple process and goes pretty quickly. Okay, so the bias button there came off, so you hit change again, and then now you're into Class AB, as you could see, and then you can play your music into there. So that's one cool feature that I haven't seen this in any amplifier before, to say change from Class A to Class B. So that's kudos there to Thomas to put in this feature, and certainly makes it unique. Okay, I'd be amiss here if I didn't talk about the remote here for the Galion 120. This remote is heavy. I mean, this is like all metal remote, super high quality. I mean, not one of those flimsy remotes, and I mean, you'd expect something, a good class heavy duty remote for something that costs this much, but this is really above and beyond. This is one solid remote for sure, metal. So let's go over quickly over the buttons on here. You got mute, standby, if you want to put the amp into standby mode, volume down and up, input down and up. You could switch your inputs on here, so it's direct on here, which I like, not just cycle it through, but it could also go directly onto there. And then you have the 3 buttons here to change the tubes from Class A to Class B. So class, change, and bias, which I just went over before. The only downside, I believe, to this remote that I don't like is maybe the button placement. I know a couple of times when I want to change the volume just higher up and down, I accidentally hit standby. You know, it happened a couple of times, so just kind of something, one of my small caveats in there. But otherwise, this is one solid remote and has pretty much all the functions you want on here, minus the tone controls. You can only do that on the amp itself. I can't do that on the remote, so perhaps that should have been on here too. But otherwise, this is a great remote. Alright, so I alluded to earlier that I had an issue with the sound of the tube amplifier where it really sounded unbalanced. Particularly the right speaker sounded louder than the left speaker, and I couldn't figure out why for the longest time. And then I went over the manual once again. Well, it turns out that these 4 tubes here for the preamps are actually different. So there's an AX7 and then there's an AT7, so there's 2 of each one, where I thought they were all the same and it didn't matter, so I just slotted them all in, and of course it was mixed up. So the AX7s have to go into these two spots, and then the AT7's on the outside. And once I put that in correctly, the sound balanced out, everything was good, and then I was ready to go. Okay, so now to the good part of the review. I'd like to talk to you guys about the sound of the unit. So this is kind of my first foray, I guess, into really a totally tube amplifier. I do have another amplifier, the Unico Primo, which is kind of a hybrid tube amplifier. Just has one tube, I believe it's for the preamp section of it. So that doesn't really count as a full tube amplifier, obviously. So Thomas was nice enough to send this to me, and you know, from the moment I plugged it in, got it all set up, which was really quick and easy to do, by the way, to get this thing going. I felt like right away in Class A, to me, was kind of my preferred choice for the sound for this amplifier. I found it very more holographic. The bass, I thought, was very good at it. The mid-range was a lot better in it for me than in Class AB. Class AB was still really good. It did put together a lot of sound qualities that I am used to and do like. However, when you have a tube amplifier and it could go into Class A, I preferred it in that profile for sure. So a bit about the sound in Class A. First of all, this thing delivers some serious bass. Like, it is, I have quite a few different amplifiers and nothing did the bass like this amplifier does. It's very weighty. It is textured. You know, I found that I did not need a subwoofer with this amplifier, even though you can hook up a subwoofer to it. Never felt the need for it, unless you're like playing some dance music and want to feel like really heavy bass and stuff like that. To me, it had enough bass for all the music that I played, and I listened to quite a variety of music, so it's very good. The mid-range to me here, I think, is a star of the show. The voices really come through, whether it's men's or women's voice. Women's voices are very airy, very delicate. You could hear every detail to it. Men's voices as well. I mean, it's so clear and articulate. To me, you know, the mid-range really is the star of the show with this amplifier. And the treble too. Speaking of the treble, it was really good. It is absolutely, you get some, it's very airy, and there's a lot of detail that comes through with it. Never bright, never fatiguing at all. That is not definitely a characteristic of this amplifier. Everything to me is kind of warm, smooth, buttery, I'd say, the sound. Just to give an example, I was playing, probably the last song I played on here was George Benson on Broadway, the live version. And if you ever heard that one before, of course it's recorded live. You can hear the crowd into it. But I think it's a really well done recording. You know, there's piano, there's a very nice drums in it. Of course, his voice is in there. So it's a really good mix to really show, you know, what this amplifier can do. And I mean, just wow, you felt like you're in the audience, you know, especially when you crank it up about 85 or 90 dB. All the cymbals are in there, the piano, the crowds. Once they start clapping, you really feel like, especially in Class A, that you're really into, you know, the concert. You're really at the concert with it. It was so well done. So yeah, I mean, this thing has the sound that you would expect from a high-end amplifiers and the tube amplifier. It's really well done. The voicing, I'd say, is whatever Thomas did to it, he definitely tweaked it to his liking. I think it'll be liked by a lot of people. But if you don't like that, that's the great thing about this amplifier, is you could change the sound to it. You could change out the tubes to it. You could change from Class A to Class AB, and that'll change the sound to it. And plus, with this sound control on here, this changes the sound as well to it. So there's a lot of sound different options to it, and that's what I like about it, that it's really versatile. And if you don't like one version of the sound, you could try another, and chances are you're going to find something you like. So that's great. Okay, so to wrap all this up, first of all, I'd just like to thank Thomas from Thomas in Stereo for sending this to me. I really appreciate it. I definitely enjoyed my time with it. This is my first experience with you know, a high-end tube amplifier, and but it was really great. You know, it definitely it showed me into the world of kind of more higher-end equipment, and really made me see, you know, what that difference is in you know, quality of construction and sound and stuff like that. So I did really appreciate it. So this is, to me, kind of those end game end pieces. So it's kind of like, a piece of jewelry, this thing. I can't tell you how many times, someone during my review process, someone came over to the house, saw this piece and said, wow, what is that? Is that, they'd never seen a tube amplifier before. They thought it was really cool. Great design, great conversation piece. It's almost like, a high-end piece of jewelry. It's kind of just as much functional as it is visually stunning as well. So this is one heck of a beautiful piece and definitely well made. So that's it, guys. What did you think of my review on the Galion TS120 Standard Edition? Let me know in the comments below. Give it a like if you liked this video, and subscribe, of course. And thanks to Thomas and Stereo again for lending me this, and we'll see you on the next video. Take care.